Hello there, my friends. I just wanted to come on here to share something with you. So, this is a little chat, especially for you who feel like you are really far from where you would like to be. Okay? And this is speaking on all levels of our being, whether it's physical sensations, mental situation, or emotional capacity. And if you can, please bear with me until the end. I might be talking for about 5 minutes or so, because I will end it on a really positive note, and I will also talk to you about something in the future. So, just like anyone else, I have, of course, tendencies of ups and downs when it comes to how I'm feeling. I think it's really important to remember that well-being or balance is not set in stone ever. There's this expression in Swedish, or at least my dad used to say it, where we compare actually muscle strength or your physical condition to fresh milk. So basically, that it has an expiry date. What I mean by that is that unless you actually maintain it on a regular basis, it will very quickly disappear. Okay? Now, taking this under consideration, remember, as I'm going to develop what's about to come, that first of all, I am in quite a good physical health, because I'm going to talk about something physical that also is actually mental and emotional, of course, but I'm going to be focusing on the physical because that's what's very easy to kind of put your hands on, or to not put your hands on, but it's hands on. So you might be like me, someone who is quite active and focused on your physical well-being as well as your mental and emotional one. But you might also be someone who is not at all that focused on it. And you might also have the, let's say, easy possibility to focus on your own well-being. But you might also be someone who needs to prioritize other things quite a lot in your life in order to not have, like social workers coming to your door. So we all have moments when we're not feeling great, and we might not all come from the same, let's say, conditions as we start to work on this, which is important to remember. So maybe a couple of months ago, I think it started, I came to a point where I was kind of crashing down. I wasn't doing great, and this was manifested physically very much, and it really had mental roots, emotional roots, but I noticed it physically because all of a sudden I had the typical symptoms that I personally get when this happens, of the 3 a.m. wake-ups where it's impossible to go back to sleep again. That's something that happens to me over the years very easily, and then that's a sign for me. But I could also feel the extortion after practice, for instance, that I would not come back to feeling energized after, for instance, my shavasana, my resting. I would actually feel depleted instead over the day. So I decided that I had overdone it and I needed some rest. I also noticed only after a couple of days that this rest actually had started, of course, on a mental level, because I was also, like many of us at this time, quite worried about a lot of things in the world at the moment, what my future will be like, my current situation, how it's going to evolve, and so there was a lot of pressure. Let's say that the intention for what I was doing to maintain my daily rhythms were more fear-based actually at that time than at other times, which is why I probably also felt this extortion and as if I'd overdone it. So what happened was that I needed to start out with about a week where I just didn't do anything. Actually, I completely stopped anything for a week, and then progressively started after a week to come back into some kind of rhythm again. Now, as Ayurveda has taught me, it is essential to not try to go back to where you used to be at a certain point, or to go into your 100% of your capacity. So you start with 50% of your capacity, which is what I did. I started with simply going out for walks, okay? Remembering that I'm someone who has a strong Mysore Ashtanga practice on a daily basis usually, or even daily for 10 years running practice as well. So I just started out with walks, and these walks would be on the beach because, well, I live on an island in the tropics, so it's the best actually option for me. When I was back in Sweden, I would love to go out for long walks in just the area where I was living, so that's like in a neighborhood, or because I was in a small town, I could also go to the woods. So it all depends on where you are, right? This was the easiest for me here and now to take walks on the beach, and I would progressively over the days of that first week make these walks a little bit more intense. So walking a little bit longer, and then also being a little bit more, with a punch in my alertness, in my energy when I was doing this walk. Over a week or two, I would then increase this, and finally, over maybe 2 weeks, I would start to integrate some exercises when I got home. Okay, so I got into some exercises that are quite core based, so focused on the abdominals and the glutes and the thighs, because that's actually what helps us to hold our structure. This is why, for instance, the practice of Pilates is so beneficial for our physical health, because it holds us up. It works on the spine, right? Just like obviously yoga, but Pilates have this focus, which is very nice. Now, after a couple of more weeks of this, let's say about a month in or so, I felt that I had come to a point where I could gently start running again. Okay, remembering that I used to be a habitual runner, I would start once again at the 50% of my own capacity, which means that I would go out for a quite short run, and I would absolutely not go very fast. Remembering as well that I'm at the moment in an environment which is really heavy. Tropics in rainy season is actually quite kapha dominated. Sure, it's hot in the day and it can be hot out throughout the whole 24 hours, but I would say that the ratio of water in the air is so high that for me it still brings a heaviness more than an agitation that Pitta would, for instance, bring. So I would be really careful with these runs. And then after a few days of running in this nice and gentle pace, I would increase that a little bit more. And then I would once again implement these exercises that I would do at home. And then over the course of about 2 weeks, I would increase the exercises as well. So I would now and then add on something new, or maybe just increase the length of one exercise. So all of that is nice and well. But what I really wanted to share with you is how the progressive work started as well to play loops with my mind, because being of a constitution of would be Pitta Vata nature, quite strong, both of them actually, I can absolutely have tendencies to, for one, go into worrying. And in that worrying, when it comes to my own health, it could be, oh, I don't understand. Why am I not feeling normal? What's wrong with me? And on the Pitta side, it could be, once again, wanting to push through a little bit more because, well, I'm supposed to be able to do this more. So what happened was, over these couple of weeks where I was progressively increasing, was that I noticed that, well, I wasn't back yet at where, I used to be at one point. And wondering why I wasn't, and creating frustration with myself around this. What I'd completely forgotten, which is why I make this video, because it's a reminder to all of you, because we're all the same there, right? What I'd forgotten is that you actually need to do this, right? Progressively and continuously, regularly. And then you will come to a point where there's a shift. And that shift happened to me yesterday. And this is why this morning when I was out again, I came to think of talking to you about it, because I think that everyone can relate on this. Now, I am once again talking so much on the physical level here, but I will obviously link this with other things as well. So what I noticed yesterday was that all of a sudden there was a lightness in the step as I was running, okay? And I could very progressively increase the run a little bit more. So something silly like, 200 meters. And then this morning I added on another 100 or 150 meters to that one, realizing that I could still feel just as light when I come back as I did a few days ago when the run was shorter. Okay, so I noticed that there was a response of my organism to my efforts that's been made over the past weeks and months. And then as I did my exercises as well, I noticed that my muscles were responding differently. There was more strength in them. I could feel my core muscles actually activating as I was doing, not just feeling depleted and doing these things where you feel like everything else in the body is trying, but the core isn't working. And all of a sudden I'd noticed this. So I could feel the stimuli and the response, if you will, in my own organism, which was then reassuring to me because I was reminded of the fact that actually it pays off. So how do I want to relate this to you in other areas of life? It is, number one, if you have, for whatever reason, had a period where you kind of dropped down, okay, now I'm talking once again physically first, and you want to come back to where you once were, you will have to be patient with yourself and you will have to go progressively because it's not going to work otherwise. Imagine me, this was just a couple of months of, like said, out of balance, and I am someone who has the time for me, and I have usually a level that is already quite good, right? So if you have not been maybe feeling yourself for a year, like a lot of us have, or maybe more, and that you have other things that are important that you need to tend to, you will need to have much more patience with yourself, actually, when it comes to this. But the good news is that once you start to notice the shift, so when there's this small feeling of increase of capacity, of a memory of this is a little bit more similar to what I once knew, then that is a motivator for you as well to continue, which will be easier than when you intentionally do the work because you know what home feels like, if you see what I mean, okay? You know what well-being feels like. You know where you're coming from, okay? And so when it comes to, as well, if I'm not just talking about the physical health that we're in, I will also talk about something like, for instance, a heartbreak. So I had a conversation with a good friend of mine the other day about heartbreak and how we just don't want to be in that place, right? It's the same thing there. On an emotional level, we need to give ourselves a little bit of patience because we will need to progressively work ourselves back towards something that is more ourselves again. And we will get back there, but we need to have patience. And I've said that word patience now so many times in this. But what it also makes me remember is that we all have these ghosts, right? Or the narrative in our mind that comes and tells us things in these moments that are more linked to our own fear of not being good enough, not being lovable, not being capable, not having the capacity to succeed, that will keep reminding us of all our fears or all our limiting beliefs about ourselves as we go through this process. And so this is what I want to end, and this is far more than 5 minutes, right? But this is where I want to end this chat on. One of the ways to counter this as we do the work is to not be alone in it, okay? So this is why in the upcoming year, I have put together a group program based on these beautiful secrets of the Ayurvedic principles, based on my knowledge of the human mind through my own background in clinical psychology, and of course, based on this idea of the yogic process of a routine. And we will work together in a group to come back to balance, to come back to that place where we know what we are really like, where our true nature shines through. Just like that seed has the full potential of the rose, so have you the full potential of your essence. If this sounds interesting to you, simply DM me Ayurveda, and I will send you the information about the group program coming up.